Okay, and it's 1 o'clock. So, hi everyone. My name is Jolene. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're going to get started. So, just a few housekeeping items to go over first. Everyone's microphones and videos should be turned off automatically when you logged in, but you do have access to a Q&A box for questions. So, feel free to use that throughout the webinar, and we will be taking breaks to read some of those out loud. This webinar is being recorded and may be posted online and sent to attendees based on quality. By participating in the webinar, you consent to it being recorded. Now for some introductions. So like I said, my name is Jolene, and I will be leading today's webinar with my colleague Kristen, whose video is off right now. We are both with the Water Conservation Department at East Bay Municipal Utility District, or EBMUD for short. I've been with EBMUD for about 6 years, where I work with our education and outreach programs. I have a background in the public sector and environmental nonprofits, and I'm also pursuing a master's degree at San Francisco State, where I'm researching how residential landscaping affects microclimates. Kristen?
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. My name is Kristen Bowman. I'm also a water conservation representative here at East Bay MUD. My focus areas are working on large landscape rebate program, creating partnerships with our landscape industry, and also working on education and outreach with Jolene. Prior to coming to East Bay MUD, I managed parks for the city and county of San Francisco, and I finished my coursework in resource management and environmental planning at San Francisco State University. So I bet we're all super excited that we have had a few days of some clean air and maybe thinking about getting outside again to work on our gardens. So that's what we're going to help get you started today. And with that, I'm going to send it back to Jolene.
Oh, great. Thanks, Kristen. And I'm actually going to stop my video here just for better reception and also to focus on the presentation. So today we will be giving an overview of water-wise gardening principles and resources for getting started. But if you are interested in going deeper into any of these topics, we have several upcoming webinars as part of our fall series. So here is the upcoming fall schedule. Next week, we will be joined by the California Native Plant Society for a webinar on plant selection for beginners, where we'll go over design principles and how to choose the right plant for the right place. After that, we have No Frustration Irrigation, where we will walk you through how to conduct a home irrigation audit to identify and resolve common mistakes. We will also be going over in that one how to convert from overhead spray to drip irrigation. Then we are partnering with the local nonprofit Greywater Action for a webinar on how to install a laundry to landscape system to use your laundry water for watering your plants. And then finally wrapping everything up with Big Gardens in Small Spaces, where we will be joined by local gardening expert Lori Caldwell to go over principles of container gardening for utilizing small spaces or enhancing existing landscapes. And so at the very beginning, someone had asked where you could register for those upcoming webinars. You can do that at ebmud.com/watersmart. Now here is the agenda for today. I'm going to start off by going over EBMUD's water supply, because understanding where our water comes from helps demonstrate the importance of conservation. Then we'll be going over the multi-benefits of water conservation. Then the steps for sheet mulching. Sheet mulching is a permaculture technique for converting your lawn. And then we'll go into details about EBMUD's lawn conversion and irrigation equipment rebates. Then some of our planting resources, things to consider when hiring a landscape contractor. And then finally, how you can track your water use using EBMUD's online platform. And then we will have some time at the end for Q&A, but we'll also be breaking throughout the agenda to answer questions. And there are a lot of folks on here, so unfortunately we might not get to everyone's questions, but we will do our best. But first we did want to enter a poll. So if everyone could take the next 30 seconds, please let us know your gardening experience. Are you novice, seasoned, or professional? Great, I see everyone's answering this pretty quickly. All right. So it looks like we do have a lot of beginners on the webinar, which is great. Like I said, this is an overview of a lot of different gardening principles. But if you are a seasoned gardener or a professional, you'll also, will I'm sure, learn some new things too, especially about some of the EBMUD resources and our rebates to learn how you can get some money back for some of your gardening projects. Let me go ahead and end that poll. Okay, now let's jump in. So where does our water come from? Well, EBMUD's water comes primarily from the McCallamy River, which is 627 square miles of pristine protected watershed.
Oh,
and 90% of our water is from melts. And this applies up to, yeah? Oh, are we good?
No, you're doing okay. Yeah, okay. You're good.
Making sure the audio didn't cut out there. So our water supply is primarily snowmelt, supplying up to 325 million gallons of water daily. And this means that we really rely on snow to help store water and fill our reservoirs as it melts throughout the spring and summer. This is a zoomed out picture of the EBMUD water supply, where you can see on the far right is the McCallamy River watershed, and raw and untreated water is then transported 90 miles via 3 aqueducts to the East Bay water treatment plants. That picture on the bottom shows those aqueducts. And then in 2002, the Freeport Regional Water Project was created, which allows EBMUD to access supplemental Sacramento River water if needed during periods of drought. You can see kind of in the top middle of the screen is the Freeport Regional Water Facility. This is zooming in on the EBMUD water and wastewater service area. We have about 1.4 million customers and also provide wastewater services. You may have seen the main wastewater treatment plant off of the freeway over near Emeryville. Together, it's over 4,000 miles of pipe and 400,000 meters that EBMUD manages. Average EBMUD household water use looks similar to these graphs. For a single family residential customer, outdoor water use is on average around 34% of total consumption, and indoor water use is 66%. So that's a pretty large percentage for outdoor water use, which is one reason why we do focus on water-wise gardening. So the message really isn't to just turn off your water and kill your plants, but instead to make sure that the water's being used efficiently. You can see this bottom picture. It's probably something we all see too often, which is where these sprinklers are misting and creating a bunch of runoff that's going down the street and just being wasted. So we really want to make sure, knowing that our water's coming all the way from the Sierras, that it's getting applied efficiently where it's most beneficial. And I'm just going to read this sentence here because it is pretty amazing. Since the 1970s, the population has increased by 20%. And current water use is at or below 1970s levels. So that really speaks to how our East Bay community does care a lot about water conservation. And many of these savings have come from legislation requiring upgrades such as high efficiency toilets and shower heads, and also improvements to outdoor irrigation technology. But a big part of those savings really do come from collective action. So I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone for all of your hard work and for caring about conservation. But we know, living in California, that periods of droughts can be common. The left side of this slide indicates precipitation for all of California, October 2019 through early March 2020. And the right side illustrates February 2020, showing that for EBMUD, it was the driest February on record since we have been collecting data over the past 85 years. Now, our water supplies right now are, I just checked, we're at about 75% full, which means we are not in a drought and we are in a pretty secure position for this late in the summer. But again, we know we can expect periods of drought to return, really on making water conservation a way of life. So if we prepare now, we will be in a better position for the future. Okay, the multi-benefits of water conservation. So now that we know where our water comes from, we can identify some of the multi-benefits of conservation. The McCallamy River watershed, for example, is a pretty complex ecosystem. And when we conserve water, we are leaving more water for fish and wildlife. Chinook salmon, for example, depend on cold water releases from EBMUD reservoirs during their salmon run. And thanks to continued conservation in combination with EBMUD monitoring and efforts to restore their habitat, we've seen record-breaking returns of salmon in recent years. And obviously there's a lot going on in the world that may be out of our control, but our local landscape is an area where we can make a positive impact. And when talking about landscaping, we like to think of our own individual yards and gardens as mini watersheds, where rainwater can flow and be absorbed into the soil, and where we can promote biodiversity through our plant selection. So what is water-wise gardening? Well, water-wise gardening is an approach to landscaping that utilizes the bay-friendly principles. These include landscape locally. So recognizing that our landscapes contribute to the health of our neighborhoods in the greater San Francisco Bay. Reduce waste. This refers to using recycled and salvaged products and keeping our garden waste out of the landfill through composting and mulching. Nurturing the soil, because soils are living ecosystems, and when landscape practices allow the soil food web to thrive, it can filter pollution, store water, and store carbon. We've got conserving water on here, which also conserves energy, because energy is needed for transporting, treating, and pumping water. We have protecting water and air quality through using integrated pest management, minimizing the use of pesticides, and keeping stormwater and irrigation on site to prevent runoff from picking up pollutants that go down storm drains. And then finally, creating wildlife habitat through plants that attract pollinators or provide shelter and food for birds, insects, and other animals. Now, what does a water-wise landscape look like? We have some fun before and after pictures here to show everyone. These were submitted a few years ago when EBMUD had its before and after photo challenge. So we had asked residents to show off your garden transformations, and these were some that really stood out. So this before picture shows a lawn that was maybe kind of dying off during the drought. And then here is the after picture. So the after picture really shows that a water-wise landscape doesn't have to be boring. It can actually have a lot of texture and color, and it's possible to choose plants so that you actually have color year-round. Here's another before picture. This one shows a well-irrigated lawn that probably required quite a bit of water and maintenance to keep it looking like this. And here's the after picture. So the transformation here really shows now it's a landscape that is more in harmony with nature. And this one especially is going to be attracting a lot of pollinators. And here's one more before one. And here's the after. And this submittal of the before and after during our contest won the award for best DIY design. You can see that it's a combination of lots of different ground covers and really fun textures and colors. So here, I think we're gonna break for another poll. So let's see, I'm gonna launch this poll for everyone. If you could take the next 30 seconds. We want to hear from you. What is most important for you to achieve with your water-wise garden? You know, maybe you have an answer beyond just these ones, but we are curious. These are some of the common answers we hear from folks. Are you interested in saving water, creating wildlife habitat, improving aesthetics, or maybe lowering your maintenance needs? Great, and I see a lot of answers coming in. Okay, you know, it actually looks pretty split across the board here. We do have a lot of people mentioning saving water, so that's great. And we will be going into a little bit about irrigation as well, and how your plant selection, choosing the right plant for the right place, can really lower water requirements. And we have a lot of people mentioning improving aesthetics. So we're really hoping in this webinar that in addition to just all the information, we can also inspire you and show you again that a water-wise garden doesn't have to be boring. Let's see, here are the results that everybody can see here. So pretty split across the board with an emphasis on saving water and aesthetics. And here we are going to go over water savings. I'm going to pass things to Kristen.
Well, it looked like water savings, though it didn't have a huge lead, had a little bit of a lead, and we're glad to hear that. And we have this neat calculator. It's called the Water Efficient Landscape Design Calculator. To help you figure out how much water you can save if you take out your lawn and put in a low water use garden. So this can be found at this website below here. It can also be found at ebmud.com/watersmart, and we will be send you links to all these as a follow-up email. So it's super easy. All you have to do is fill in your city and how much lawn you want to convert. So I made it simple for the example today, where I selected Oakland with 1,000 square feet to convert. And 1,000 square feet over a year will use 32,000 gallons of water. That's a well-watered lawn. So the next step is figuring out what kind of landscape type do you want and at what square footage. So let's say you want 250 square feet of ground cover, perennials, shrubs, and trees. And then you figure out what type of water use, how much water do these specific species use. And the options are very low, low, moderate, or high. And moderate and really high is only for the lawn. And then you select the irrigation type, drip or spray. Drip is going to give you more efficiency. And then it calculates how much water you save or how much water you're going to use. If you add sheet mulching to it, and we're going to go into sheet mulching in just a minute, you're adding compost to the soil, and compost helps maintain moisture in the soil, so it's going to reduce your water needs. So you have an extra water savings by doing sheet mulching. So let's take a look at, let's see the contrast. So after you've done your water-wise garden and all the plants have been established, you are going to be using approximately 9,000 gallons a year compared to 32,000 gallons a year. The green line on this graph, the vertical green line, shows you where we hope you get to. It's like a benchmark. But this particular design where we picked primarily low plants and drip and we sheet mulch came well below that. If you have any questions about how much water does your plants use, Julie, You can use this database. This is one resource. There are many resources which tell you if it's a low, medium, or high water use plant. This is one that's handy. We use a lot here in the office. You put in your city, and then you put in the common name or the botanical name. You hit search plants, and it will tell you if it's a low, moderate, or high water use plant. So that's hopefully just another little motivator to get you going in your garden, not only to create aesthetics and lower your maintenance and attract birds and butterflies, but also to save some significant water. And at this point, we're just going to take some questions, pause a minute. People are asking about if this is going to be available. So we are going to make this PowerPoint available online, and we will likely be sending you a recorded version of this, but we're just going to see what the quality is, but we will send you a link for the PowerPoint presentation.
Great. Kristen, I got a question for you here about the calculator. Someone's asking, after removing a lawn and putting in a new plants, the plant will need some water to get established. Does the calculator take that into account?
The calculator is really after it's established how much water those plants need. And depending on if you're using native plants or summer dry, the amount of water that you're going to use to establish them actually may not be that much more, particularly if you plant in the fall and take advantage of the winter rains, then you may be helping them along a little bit in the spring and summer, but eventually they should really be doing pretty well on their own.
Great. I have another question here that says, we would love to have suggestions for water-wise gardens that maintain space for our children to play. Kristen, do you have any thoughts on that one?
You know, you can, in terms of maintaining a space for your children to play, it sounds like maybe you want to maintain part of a lawn. And we certainly recommend, if you use your lawn for, your kids or for picnicking or recreation, keep your lawn. And so maybe you want to establish part of it as a lawn and part of it as a low water use garden. And even by removing part of your lawn, you can save a lot of water and potentially be within that benchmark that we're looking for, that we demonstrated in the calculator. So there was a question here is if we've seen the residential water use go up during COVID, and we actually have. The residential water use has gone up a little bit. Commercial has come down. That has been a trend.
All right, I think we're gonna just move on for now, and we will be taking a break for questions again in a little bit. So we did want to focus on sheet mulching, because sheet mulching really is essential to creating a water-wise garden. It really is the foundation for getting started. So sheet mulching can save time, money, and water. You can be very economical with acquiring your materials. It helps to build healthy soil because all of the materials you're putting down will be breaking down over time. It can really help create those attractive climate appropriate gardens, eliminates the need for grass and weed killing herbicides, improves water retention in the soil by enhancing the soil structure. So sheet mulching is also sometimes referred to as lasagna gardening. Essentially what you're doing is creating these different layers as shown here in the picture so that you can compost your lawn on site. The alternative to this would be digging out your lawn and then coming back in to put down mulch. But a lot of people don't realize that actually digging out your lawn, even if you're putting your lawn in the green bin for pickup by our waste haulers, it will actually get sorted out and will still end up in the landfill. And that's because when you're digging out sod like that, sometimes it can even come with plastic netting that gets caught in the commercial composting equipment. So that's why it gets sorted out and then still ends up as waste in the landfill. So you can you know, again, keep your lawn in place, but instead create these layers where you're going to be blocking out the sun, suppressing weeds, and building healthy soil all at the same time. So the first step in sheet mulching, and we're just gonna go over these steps pretty quickly here, but to make sure you have a clear idea of what sheet mulching is, the first step is you do want to prepare the site. So you'll do this by knocking down or mowing existing vegetation one last time so that everything lays flat. You'll want to flag any of your sprinkler heads so that you don't forget where they are, especially if you're going to be converting them to drip irrigation. You'll want to edge the lawn to avoid runoff and keep mulch on site. And then with the sod from the edging, you can actually make mounds in your garden. Now, edging is the part that is probably the most labor intensive with sheet mulching. The bottom picture here is showing what we mean by edging. And because we're creating these layers that are going to be raised up from your lawn, you want to edge so that you can tuck everything down into that edge you create so that it's closer to laying flat with any of your hardscapes, so your sidewalk or your driveway. And this also prevents any stubborn weeds and grass from poking up there along the edge and then spreading out. So that's step one, prepare your site. Step two is going to be planting any of those large plants, 5 gallons or larger. You'll go ahead and dig a hole, rough up the root ball, and then partially backfill the hole with soil mixed with compost to give that large plant a head start. And then step three is putting down your weed barrier. And this is very important because this is the part that's really going to contribute to blocking out the sun, suppressing weeds, and killing off your lawn. And so you can collect cardboard, like in this picture, these are just cardboard boxes. So if you're able to collect enough between your family and your neighbors, that can be great. Or some nurseries and hardware stores sell rolls of recycled cardboard. So you can actually purchase that as well. It can be a little bit easier to lay that down. But you'll want to do 2 layers of cardboard. Make sure all pieces are overlapping by 6 to 8 inches, because if they're not overlapping, that's where the sun's going to come in and you're going to get weeds and grasses popping up. So full coverage. And then you will wet that cardboard as well, just to give everything a head start with breaking down. And then step 4 is your compost and mulch layers. You may read kind of different recommendations online, but it's all still pretty similar in the same process. We recommend 1 to 2 inches of compost to help with building healthy soil. And then on top of that, a layer 3 inches of mulch. But if your main goal is just weed suppression, then just mulch should be sufficient, but you may want to increase the thickness. And mulch doesn't last forever, so it is something that you may need to replace every 2 to 3 years. And then step 5 is planting your small plants. You don't have to wait for your lawn to be killed off before you plant. You can actually do it right away. You can cut a hole in the cardboard. We recommend making kind of an X in the cardboard and peeling it back to the size of your plants. You'll want to dig about as deep as the root ball and 3 times as wide. And then just make sure that you are keeping the mulch away from the crown of the plant so that it has some room to breathe and spread out. You may get some pieces of grass or weeds pop up around your new plants, so you will need to be diligent about going out there and making sure you're hand picking any of those. But it's never been a problem just to go ahead and plant right away. And then as we mentioned earlier, we're having this fall webinar series because in California, fall really is the best time to get started with your new garden, because if you get started on sheet mulching now and you plant right before the rains, then hopefully your plants will get enough of that rainwater to help them get established so that next summer they only need supplemental irrigation. And so something you do want to consider while you are planning out your water-wise garden, and if you are going to be planting right away, you do want to keep in mind hydrozoning. Hydrozoning is where you are grouping plants with similar water needs so that when you do set up your irrigation, you can put each of those different zones on their own irrigation valve and set up a unique schedule. And so this is an illustration. It's pretty simplified, but it's just showing how you might conceptualize hydrozoning when you're looking at your landscape. You do want to consider microclimates. Are your plants going to be in full sun or part shade? And then what are their water needs? And you can look up those water needs on the WUCOLS website that Kristen showed earlier. This illustration is showing that all of the moderate to high water use pots are grouped together. High water ground covers grouped together. Very low water plants are grouped together. So then when you are setting up your irrigation schedule, you can make sure that they have different run times for their needs. Otherwise, if everything was just set on the same schedule, then your high water plants would probably not be getting enough water, and your low water ones would probably be getting too much. And so, you know, when sheet mulching, you also do want to consider what are you going to do for irrigation. Typically, you're going to want to convert your overhead spray to drip irrigation. Drip emits water right near the plant so that it's being efficiently applied. And there are drip conversion kits available at irrigation centers and hardware stores. You'll want to cap off your extra overhead spray nozzles. And then if you are going to be putting down drip, it typically goes under the mulch layer to protect the tubing from the sun and reduce water loss. And then just a note about mulching trees, because this is a common mistake we see when we're going out on inspections. We see mulch too close to the trunk of the tree. And you don't want to do that because mulch is going to hold in moisture, and if it's too close to the trunk of the tree, it can actually cause rot and disease. So instead, you want to do something more like this, showing that you actually have some space between the trunk and your mulch layer. So there's the 2 to 3 inches max depth with about 6 to 12 inches from the trunk of the tree. And then EBMUD has partnered with local nurseries and soil providers to provide coupons for mulch and compost. You can go onto our website and print off coupons either for bulk or bags. So definitely something you'll want to check out and support some local businesses. All right, I know that was a lot. We just kind of breezed through sheet mulching there. So wanted to pause and see if there were any questions again.
We have a lot of questions, so we'll get to some of these. One was, do you wet the cardboard? Do you wet the cardboard before you lay the cardboard? Oh,
typically you'll wet it after you put it down. So if you do have access to a hose, you can just run the hose around to soak the cardboard. And that part isn't mandatory, but it can make the cardboard a little bit more manageable, to be honest. It makes it a little bit more bendable and heavier, so it's not going to be as likely to blow away in the wind. And the moisture is going to help with jump-starting the decomposition process.
What about using newspaper instead of cardboard?
You know, newspaper could work. It's the same concept, especially if you're just going to be sheet mulching around a really small area or maybe an existing planter bed. But because newspaper is thinner, you're going to need to use more layers. You want to make sure it's not going to decompose too quickly before you've had a chance to really kill off the weeds and grass.
Do I have to remove labels, package, tape, etc. from cardboard first?
If possible, you do want to try to remove any big pieces of tape or labels, but it's not absolutely necessary. What will happen is as your cardboard and your boxes start to decompose, the plastic is not going to decompose. Plastic doesn't ever really break down. We want to make sure we're keeping it out of the environment though, but you'll actually see the pieces of plastic kind of float to the top, and you'll be able to really easily go and collect them from your yard. But you know, we don't want that plastic to be blown into the road and get swept down the storm drain. So if you can remove it, that's great. But if you can't get everything, you will probably have a chance to go out around your yard and collect it as things break down.
How about one more on mulch? How do rocks compare to mulch?
You know, we've seen people use rocks for mulch, and it can be effective in suppressing weeds. And some people really like it as an aesthetic for low water gardens. But the benefit of mulch is that it's really going to help retain moisture for your plants. And then the mulch itself will be breaking down over time, adding to the health of your soil. So it creates a good environment for all of those different organisms to come and create soil structure. All right, should we move on and we'll have a chance to break for questions again later?
Yes.
All right.
No one else can respond, so I will. Oh, so hopefully that enticed you, but we have some other incentives, and that is we do have quite a few landscape rebates. If you remove your lawn and replace it with a low water use garden, it's 75 cents per square foot. There was a question in there about what is our thoughts on artificial turf. Artificial turf is not eligible for the program. And, you know, I mean, from an ecological point of view, not super excited about it, but if you have, you know, a need that's specific to you, that artificial just solves the problem you're trying to solve. But what we're looking to do when we do the lawn conversion is still have a living space, a place that there's a living soil and plants are there to continue to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. There's an option if you have like a planted bed already planted and it's on a spray system and it's pretty inefficient, you can go ahead and convert that to drip irrigation and it's 25 cents a square foot. If you want to keep your lawn, and some people, it sounds like they have kids or dogs and may want to keep part of their lawn, that's fine. There's an option of upgrading your spray nozzles, and Jolene showed one picture. We saw a lot of misting with the spray heads. There's a high efficiency rotating nozzle that will help save about 20% of your water by just changing out that spray head. It's up to $5 if you add a pressure regulator to it. We have self-adjusting controllers, and that's one of our more popular rebates right now. A self-adjusting controller is basically taking in the current weather conditions at your local, at your site and adjusting your irrigation schedule accordingly. So it's 75 cents to convert a conventional controller and upgrade it to a weather-based controller, and depending on how many stations you have, up to $125. Pressure regulators are important. You might need to put one on your house if you're putting in drip irrigation. Drip irrigation to work efficiently really requires about 30 PSI. So if there's too much pressure coming out of your house, you want to slow that down, reduce that, and we have a rebate for that. In irrigation submeter, there was a question that came up of how do you know how much water is being used in the landscape versus the indoor use? And it is an estimate. We don't know exactly. It is an estimate, but one method that we use is by looking at your indoor use during the winter, or looking at your winter use during the rain, and then comparing it to summer use. And if you're irrigating your lawn, we usually see a significant bump up in the irrigation months. So that's how we kind of can estimate how much water is being used in the outdoors. An irrigation submeter can help you figure out exactly how much water is being used in the outdoors. And it often has a portal that you can log in and really get more data on it, and has leak alerts. So if there's a leak in your irrigation system, which often happens at night when your irrigation's on and you have no idea that there's a geyser, this will give you an alert that something's going on out there. We have a new flow meter pilot program, and a flow meter is really for the whole house. So to give you hour-to-hour data on how your water is being used for your whole home, and that also have leak alerts and a lot of data for you to be able to compare from month to month or year to year on how you're doing with your water. So for homeowners, you can receive up to $2,000 rebate, and the way we do the rebate, it comes as a credit on your water bill. And that's every 2 years. So let's say you just have enough budget to do your front yard 1 year, that's fine, and you can wait another couple years and do your back, and then if our rebate program is still running, you would be eligible for another $2,000. Same for commercial properties. It's a little bit higher, $15,000 every 2 years, and that would be for an HOA. So some things that to think about to be eligible for our lawn conversion program is that we don't allow any synthetic weed cloth. And we have found that synthetic weed cloth can actually be it can kind of inhibit you from getting the weeds out. It can be challenging to remove the roots with the weed cloth. It also, many of them are made from petroleum products and biodegrades into the soil, leaving little particles that we're really not interested in having in the soil. We are asking you to keep that after maturity, 50% of the area is planted. Again, we're trying to maintain a living soil and continue to convert oxygen and sequester carbon. So we are looking for a living space. Using low or very low or summer dry plants, that the lawn was previously irrigated. So we take a look at your water use over a couple year period and seeing, and again, as I described before, looking to see that there's a bump in the summer that shows that you are actively irrigating. No invasive plant species, and we have resources available for you if you have any questions about that, and 3 inches of mulch. So the process is you submit an application, and with your applications, pictures of your existing landscape with your irrigation on, a list of the low water use plants or plants that you're proposing for your project. And we'll be taking a look at that, making sure that those are plants that we recommend. And if you have any questions, we can help answer those. On the application, you're also putting square foot and number of devices. You have 6 months to complete the project. If you need another month or two, we're going to work with you on that. So please don't forget about us if you feel like you're going over with your time. We really proactively work with you on that. And then we usually do a site inspection. Currently, we're doing that virtual for our. And then after the post inspection has been completed, whether it's on-site or virtual, then you will receive a rebate on your water bill. It will come up as a credit within 2 billing periods. So some people think, oh, low water use plants, they're all dry and brown. And I did see a question in there about someone who has some browned out plants right now. And if that's natural, it probably is natural based, and not a lack of water based on what kind of plants you planted. But you can literally have year-round color based on what plants you choose in your yard. I currently have California fuchsia. It's a very low water use plant, and the hummingbirds love it. It's in full bloom right now, so I have a lot of red in my garden. So we have a lot of plant resources, and to dive deeper into plants, I highly recommend plant selection for beginners next Wednesday from 1 to 2. It's going to be a gorgeous presentation, for one thing, looking at all these plants, but really getting into a lot more detail about the resources and how to plan and design your garden. But just briefly, we have our EBMUD plant book, which is highlighted here on the right. We have an EBMUD low water use plant list, which our Landscape Advisory Committee developed. UC Davis has tested different drought-tolerant plants and created a list for that. WUCOLS database, which we have covered. CalScape, and that database is going to be demonstrated next week. But briefly, you can look at a plant and find out what nurseries carry it. So it kind of takes the guesswork out of that. California Native Plant Society also has design templates. So sometimes the design is the biggest barrier, like where do I put the plants and in what combination and what looks good together. They've actually created some templates to take out that guesswork, and we are going to be going over that next week. A couple of people asked questions about firescaping, and someone asked about mulch. One mulch that you really want to stay away from is gorilla hair. That is the more flammable mulch. Compostable mulch, 3 inches in long or smaller, is something that you want to go with. The firescaping booklet, which is produced by EBMUD, is probably of particularly interest to folks who might live near a wild area. It's an excellent booklet. It's been recently reviewed by different fire agencies, and so it's all up to date. That is available free online on our website. Oh, someone asked about when do I stop watering? What's the watering schedule? When do I turn off my irrigation? November is a good time to turn off your irrigation, and April is about the time you're thinking about turning it on. We got some really late rain this year. February was completely dry, but then we got rain in mid-March. And so, you know, you have to kind of see what's going on with the weather, but November is a good time to turn it off, and April, May is about the time that you want to be putting it on. This is a very general sample summer watering schedule, specifically looking at the month of July, which we view as the time of year that you're going to be watering the most because it's the hottest and longest days. And just to take a look at it real briefly, lawn east of the hills. So if you do have lawn, which is considered a high water use plant, and it's east of the hills, it's not really, doesn't have the marine layer that we have here west of the hills. You're going to need to water a little bit more. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. West of the hills, probably twice a week. Shrubs, medium water use shrubs, also maybe twice a week. It might be just once a week if they're well established. Low water use shrubs, once a week, and if they're well established, it might be even less than that. And if you're going with natives and low water use plants, you might be looking at watering them once a month. Again, it's really very site specific, and this is general, but you can see how you can go from watering 3 days a week to, if you're working with natives, low water use natives that aren't adapted to summer water, they're adapted to dry summers. You are looking at watering possibly once a month. So that's a big break in your watering schedule. You also want to test your zones. Before you turn on your irrigation, you want to test your zones to make sure everything's working properly, there's no leakage. Let's take a look at the questions.
Great. There's a couple of rebate specific questions, and I know the process, there's a lot there. Somebody is wondering, can you get the lawn conversion rebate for converting your backyard? They thought that it was only for the front. Could you clarify, Kristen?
Yes, and actually thank you for bringing up rebates again. The answer is yes for East Bay MUD. That might not be true for Contra Costa Water District. And I want to mention, if anyone here is with Contra Costa Water District, they also have similar rebates. They're not exactly the same, but you do want to visit their website. For East Bay MUD, front and backyard are eligible.
Great. Somebody else is saying that they hand water their garden right now. Can they still receive the rebate? Will they still be eligible? If they're
yeah, we will be looking at your water usage, possibly yes. If we're seeing significant water irrigation, even if you're hand watering in the summer, where we are going to be able to see some water savings by going with the low water use garden. So it's a little tougher for us to tell, but I would send in your application for us to take a look at it.
Great. Somebody else is wondering, can you keep existing trees?
Yes, you can keep existing trees. Absolutely. Please do.
Great. Just a lot of rebate questions, and we do want to make sure we're clarifying this for everyone. Somebody says, we are building a new house. Can we still get the rebates?
Is it a new, you mean a new house on a new yard? Is it a new yard, like not a watered yard?
That part's unclear.
Okay. Probably not if it's a brand new yard that you're putting in. It really would have to be a conversion from a lawn to a low water use garden. It depends on if you're converting something that's existing, yeah.
And then another person is saying, is the lawn replacement rebate available for a lawn that has died and gone to weeds?
Maybe not. I mean, sometimes during a drought, we will give a little wiggle room on that because we know people have turned off their water. If we're not in drought years, we have to take a look at how long that's been going on. If it's been going on for a significant amount of time where it really hasn't been managed as a lawn, likely that particular rebate would not work out. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on here. Almost out of time.
Oops. So some of you are probably super excited to get back out there, get your hands dirty, do it yourself, and all of this is possible yourself. It's definitely suitable for a DIY. And some of you are going to be like, you know what? Who can I hire to get this done? And I can't wait to see it when it's done. So hiring a landscape contractor, just a couple tips on that. And we have more on this on our website. But you know, things that you might want to be looking for is if they're licensed or bonded, length of time in the industry, I would look for 5 years. Have them describe a little bit about their formal and ongoing education. The landscape industry is ever changing, so you want to be sure that they're up to date with the latest information and any kind of membership in professional organizations. Also references. Is there someone in your neighborhood or close by that a garden you can take a look at that would be optimal? And then if you're, you know, just kind of interviewing your contractor, some of the questions you might ask them are, what practices do you use to encourage healthy, low water use gardens? So a lot of this we covered in our presentation today: use of compost, mulch, sheet mulching, use of low water use plants, California native plants, Mediterranean plants, organic fertilizers, and recycled materials. What water-saving irrigation methods do you use? Hydrozoning, as we talked about today, making sure plants with similar water needs are on the same valve. Drip in conjunction with flush and pressure valves to help the system work most efficiently. As we mentioned, high efficiency rotating nozzles if you want to keep out some overhead spray, and recommending weather-based irrigation controllers. So once you have completed your garden, this is so exciting. All of you who have an account with East Bay MUD have access to your water report portal. So you go online and sign up, and then you can view your water use. You can actually pay your bills and find out other recommendations to save water. But you can view your water use over time and look at it from season to season and year to year and see how you're doing with saving water. You can also set leak alerts. This is available on your phone or tablet or on your desktop. So we hope that you have come at least a little more interested in putting in a garden, and maybe you're leaving with more questions than you've started with, but that's good because we have many other workshops to help you with that. Most of this information, or all of it, is on ebmud.com/watersmart. We're also going to send you a follow-up email with links to a lot of the resources that we discussed today. Right after you're done, you're going to get a 4-question evaluation, and we'd love for you just to take a minute to fill that out. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's see, we have just a couple minutes if we have a few more questions. Also, you can contact Jolene or I at any time to help you with your project, and everyone here at the Water Conservation Division is here to help you with your questions around water conservation. Let's see, Jolene, do you see anything that?
We do have time for a few questions. Here's one, Kristen. Does EBMUD recommend contractors?
Oh, we don't have, no, we're not actually allowed to do that as a public agency, recommend specific contractors, but you can go, and we have this on our website, some directories that would be helpful. One is Rescape. California has a directory, and they have been certified in the Bay-friendly principles.
Great, and then there's another question about artificial turf. Somebody is wondering if the rebate is available for converting artificial turf or lawn into a low water garden.
Artificial turf is not eligible for our program. So if you wanted to do some artificial turf, you could do part of your project with artificial turf, but that portion of it would not be eligible for our program.
Great. I see there's a lot of questions here specific about irrigation equipment. For some of these, I am going to recommend that you tune in for our No Frustration Irrigation webinar that's coming up, where we'll have some irrigation experts available to go over some of those questions.
I do want to emphasize for East Bay MUD, we do provide a rebate for both the front and backyard. It looks like that question came up again. So that's yes, we do a rebate for the front and backyard. Our roses water efficient shrubs. There are some roses that can be water efficient. The red carpet rose is used a lot. So it's going to be species by species, and I would use that WUCOLS to take a look or Google it. I also go to San Marcos nursery a lot because they have a huge database to check water use.
Okay, great. Well, I think with that, we are just going to wrap things up. Like Kristen mentioned, we are going to have a small poll sent out to everybody, a small survey. So if you could let us know what you thought about this webinar, that would be great. And then we will be sending out a follow-up email with links to some of these programs that we mentioned. So we'll be linking you to those EBMUD mulch coupons, our lawn conversion rebate application, and some other plant resources. So thanks everyone so much for joining.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was really a pleasure to be with you and get all these excellent questions. So until the next time, have a good rest of your afternoon.